We are recording. This is Forde Radio, episode 18. The legend David Hompes is back. Hi, David. How are you?
Not bad, Ross. You, mate? You good?
Amazing. Just talking before we pressed record. We're on the way out of lockdown.
Finally.
Yeah.
For this one anyway, for this lockdown, until the next one. I don't think people realise what's in store in the future, having had the precedent of one lockdown or two or three lockdowns that we've had since last April. But it's a controversial topic. You can only sort of do it lip service in a short period of time.
Don't bring it down early in the first minute.
Exactly.
Jurgen Klopp, is he staying?
Yeah, definitely.
Are they going to sort it out?
Definitely.
Six wins.
Jurgen's come out today and said he's not going to be Germany manager. So he might go and do something else, but he's going to honour his contract 3 more years. How are they going to turn it round? I just think it's been a freak season. I think from the Everton game onwards, when Van Dijk got injured and Thiago got injured, it's just gone downhill. I mean, they're perfectly good winner that was onside, disallowed in the last minute as well, pretty much. Super controversial game. Everything's gone tits up since then, really. And I think it's just, you know as well as I do, that with training, you get into a routine and you gain momentum. And that's hard to stop. But it's equally hard to stop when you sit on the couch, you miss a session, and then you go, I'll miss another session. It's very easy to fall out of that momentum.
Yeah.
And they've been on an upward curve for 3 years, and they've been amazing. Nobody's going to... As a Liverpool fan, I'm just stunned at what was achieved over the last 3 years. It's been so entertaining and so rewarding. But there was always going to be a dip. You cannot maintain that on an ongoing basis. Even, under Ferguson, Man U had dips and things like that. Maybe not as bad as this one, but I think they've had twice as many man hours or game hours from players injured as the next most injured team, if that makes sense. So the number of games or hours on the pitch missed, twice as many. It doesn't matter whether you've got the best squad in the world or what. You can't cope with that. You can have no consistency in the lineup and stuff like that. And I think also they're fucked, basically, the players. They're fucked from 3 years of really, really intense success. People think, oh, that's ridiculous. They get paid a fortune and all of this. But try being an A-list celebrity, being in the limelight all the time, having all that pressure and not cracking at some point. Yeah. They just need to regroup. I think there's some dead wood in the squad. Get rid of that. Bring 3 or 4 really good players in. Hungry players. Liven it all up. And I think they'll be fine. Crowds back in the stadiums next year. New season, start again. And they'll be back. I still don't think they're as good as Man City, but they'll certainly compete again. They may even win the Champions League yet. You never know. It's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to screw that up.
Absolutely.
But it has been interesting to see the fact that they've gone from right at the top to rock bottom. I mean, 6 straight home defeats. Something's going on with the psychology there. That doesn't happen just because of fatigue. They've still got good players, even when they bring the reserves in. So there's something weird going on, but I'm sure they'll turn it around. Yeah.
I mean, you'd expect... I mean, City had that wonderful season when you came second. So I feel like that, you can't always stay at the top in any sport. No one can. And you see it more and more in boxers, where boxers get up and win that world title and then just can't continue to keep getting himself up every fight.
Absolutely. You never know as well. Psychologically, only Klopp will know this and his backroom team. But I remember, do you remember, I don't know if you follow rugby union, when England won the World Cup in 2003, down under, they had one of the best wingers in the world, Ben Cohen. He was still pretty young, but he won everything when he was young and just fell out of love with rugby, just disappeared completely off the scene, because why put your body through that week in, week out and be in the limelight when you've already done everything there is to do in the game? Some players, I think, get to the top and then realise there's no more to achieve, and so they stop. Other players just get more and more hungry for it. Messi and Ronaldo and people like that. They can't get enough of it, but not everybody's the same.
No, I feel like fans don't accept that people have achieved certain amount and they've put so much effort in, and then they're just not bothered. David Bentley was quite a high profile one. Okay, he wasn't very old when he retired, did he? He just had enough.
No. And at one point he had the world at his feet. He was an amazing player. And then just who was another one? Lee Sharp. I don't know. It's a long, long time ago. Back in the early 90s with Leeds United. Lee Sharp and there was another one as well, but they just, they fizzled out eventually. Before they should have done, really. But it's not for us to sit here and criticize. You don't know what it's like. People dream of being celebrity, but the pressures of being in the tabloids and not being able to walk down the street and people slagging you off left, right, and centre because they're jealous because they don't have what you have. It's not as easy a life as people make it out to be. There's just as many downsides as there are upsides to it.
We're mentioning cricket.
I think we should mention cricket. I think it's been a bonkers winter for cricket. England did really well in Sri Lanka. Joe Root was on fire. Started on fire in India, and then it went downhill pretty rapidly from there. And
do you feel like that was psychology as well? Whereas the spinners, and no one likes getting out to a spinner, do you? Because you feel like you've had your pocket picked, don't you, when a spinner gets you out?
Yeah, I think a mixture of both. I think it's easy to criticise the England players for being crap in the batting area for 3 consecutive games. But it's a totally different set of conditions. Cricket's a really bizarre sport in that it's almost a different game when you go and play it in India compared to playing it in a warm, humid, June Saturday at Headingley. It's just not, the ball behaves differently. The players are able to adapt or not adapt to the different conditions. And India play most of their time in India, and England play most of the time in England. England seem to always beat India in England, and India beat England in India. And if you look around the world, home advantage just seems to be, massive. You get the odd away win in a series, but it's almost like it gets a bit boring actually, because the home team gets such a great advantage from being used to the conditions, and the other players don't have that experience. And sometimes you get a very one-sided game or a very one-sided series as a result of that. And that's a big problem with cricket. That's got the potential to bring Test cricket, run it into the ground. Because who wants to go and watch a Test match that only lasts 2 or 3 days? If you're a purist, it's ridiculous. So I don't know. And you can see from the viewing figures and the crowds that go to T20s and one-day games that people seem to prefer to go to those games now. They can get in and get out in 3 hours at a T20, have a load of entertainment, have a few beers, shout some obscenities at the fielders, and go home. Or go to the pub. Better crack.
Yeah. Agreed. Those Test matches, they're in the day. It takes too long.
It does take too long.
For the average man, you've got to have a day off work.
I stopped playing cricket for that reason. Well, so I just big myself up here. I played in the same Yorkshire schoolboys team at under 14 and 15 as Silverwood, who's now the coach. Yeah. Michael Bourne, who was the captain. Alex Wharf, who played for England in limited overs cricket. And there were some others that went on to play county cricket at a pretty high level as well. And I sat there just after 2 or 3 games going, this is shit. I don't want to do this. Because we were just playing all day at that level at that time. And I didn't even want to play all day in one day, never mind, over the space of a Test match or a whole career. I just thought, there's no way I want to do this. I want to carry on playing football. I want to do well at school. I want to do all these other things as well. And so good luck to the guys who do it. But I can't imagine the boredom of just doing the same thing like that over and over and over and over again every day, especially when it's cold and you have to stand in the field. And
oh, come on. Have you heard yourself? I mean, I agree with you somewhat, because I was playing, and when you're in a club, you kind of have to play Thursday night and you have to play Saturday. So you're all day Saturday, here, there and everywhere. And then Sunday, if there's a cup game, or Monday night, there might be a limited overs cup game and stuff like that. So it did start taking over the life. And the team that I started with, like, I didn't have any real close mates in there. Like, I got on with everyone because I was young at the time, and kind of get on everyone, don't you? But then there's no real good best mates in there for me to want to carry on kind of playing and spending all day there.
Yeah.
On a Saturday, which is kind of your best day, especially when you're not kind of, I was early 20s at the time, just finding my feet. I'd keep wicket, but I won't get a bat.
Yeah.
If you're not getting a bat, what's the point?
Absolutely. No, I know what you mean. I enjoyed it. I carried on playing with a lot of the guys that I grew up with and stuff. And so we went through together, and it was a great laugh. But I didn't want to play at a level where I wasn't able to go out on a Friday night for a few beers for fear of not performing the next day and getting bollocked by the captain or anything like that. I wanted to just play at a level that was competitive, where it tested you, but you were having a lot of fun, and it didn't really matter that much at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then you could go out for a beer after the game, and then go for a curry, or go into town and have a night out with everybody and do it that way. So that's the level that I stuck at. I don't think I'd have been good enough to play at a high level anyway, because mentally I just didn't have what it took to be high-level sports person. I just couldn't be asked with it. Plus, I don't like being told what to do.
You couldn't be asked with it.
I don't like being told what to do when people's bossing you around, and no, wasn't for me. Anyways, it was good fun while it lasted.
I feel like I should go back while I can still move about.
I've given up on that
because I never got a century. I want to say I got two 50s.
Did you?
Got two 50s. The second one was bad because there was this is a standard that I played at. There was a wedding in the first team. One of the first team was getting married, so all these mates went to they all played together. They all went to the wedding on the Saturday. So all the second team went up to play the first team, and I got left in the second team, but I opened the batting. And basically, I think they gave the game up. But if we batted all the way, it meant that we got 2 points or 1 point. I can't remember how it was all worked out. So basically, I had to go and bat 40 overs out and managed to get 50.
Nice.
In 40 overs while just...
Jeffrey Boycott?
Yes, absolutely, which is kind of not the idea in a 40 over game.
You always don't underrate the person who just stays in there and accumulates slowly while everybody else is getting out. Without those guys, sometimes you're all out for 40.
Yeah, well, that was my job in the juniors, because juniors, that had happened quite easily, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a team could be bowled out 50. So my job was to go and see. And in the level that we played, you'd have there was not enough people to be all under 15. So you'd have 200 15s, and then you'd have 4 under 13s, and then you'd have 3 under 11s. So I'd go in first, open as a junior, and then see off the opening bowlers who were the big kids, and then open up a little bit. Yeah. That's kind of how you managed it.
Yeah, you need openers to stay in there, definitely.
You had like a power play of, because the bowlers were only allowed to bowl 4 overs, something like that each. Potentially. So it was all tactics like that. And this was before 2020 started nationally. So the only cricket that you'd watch was Jeffrey Boycott being the commentator saying, they've played a crap shot, they've got themselves out. They've played a crap shot. And I was like, right, don't play any crap shots, don't get out. Don't play any crap shots, don't get out. So I was boring. I had mums and dads booing me. Because their son would never get a bat because I'd just be blocking. I grew out of it as I got a bit older, I think, but early doors, I was terribly boring to watch.
We've all been there. I managed to get 1 century, but I was really a bowler, more sort of a bowling all-rounder. So 1 century, and then when I was in the late teens, there weren't any bowling restrictions back then, and I'd bowl 23 overs from one end in consecutive.
Nice.
And then bat 4 or 5 and just be, screw you all. I'm just going to do what I want. It was, I think it irritated some of the older guys for sure. But the argument was we need to play the kids and get them to come through. So we've got a stronger first team. So anyway, no, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Are we going back? Absolutely.
Maybe. my eyesight's not so great at the moment. So I found when I was still playing, when did I stop? About 6 years ago. I found that I was okay batting because I could watch the bowler run in and then watch his arm come down and see the ball, even when it was a bit dark. But fielding, when it's just starting to get dark, I couldn't tell. I'd hear them hit it.
Yeah.
I'd wait for somebody to shout, Dave, left or right. Couldn't see it. So I stopped because I just figured it's a bit dangerous not to be able to see the ball very well when it's getting dark.
You want to be the keeper? Get behind the stumps. You've always got the side screen.
Could do. Never liked it, but I bowl as well, you see, so can't keep and bowl really.
Yeah, no, you're doing everything there. Take it over to Dave.
Just do everything. Make yourself captain. Anoint yourself with the captaincy and
take over.
Do everything yourself.
Right. We have made a few notes of what we're going to talk about today, not just our failed sporting careers. You've got a few points on the COVID and the lockdown. The first point I think you wanted to discuss was about the use of drugs. So the vaccine versus... Yeah,
I think there's loads of important things to say. We could probably do a 3-hour thing on COVID, but I think after a year of this pretty much now, it's strengthened my conviction that some of the stuff that I learned from Dr. John DeMartini, who's been one of my major teachers, he starts a lot of his teachings, if not all of them, with the idea of values, that every human being, we have a unique fingerprint, we have a unique DNA genome, and we also have a unique set of values. Values are almost like life priorities. What's the most important to the least important? And everybody's is different. So, for some people it's raising a family, for some people it's their job, for other people it's playing sport, for other people it's researching, and it's unique. You never get people with exactly the same hierarchy of values from top to bottom. And one of the most interesting things that I've noticed is how the government and the media have really basically said there's only one solution to this problem, and that is a vaccine. You're not safe unless you have a vaccine, but that's not really true. So I've spent 25 years studying the human body and the mind and how they work together. And I've just done another course on immunology, which was close to 300 hours, pretty intense course. And I'm not scared of COVID at all because I understand how my body works. I understand how my immune system works. I understand what I need to do to make sure that if I get COVID, it'll only be a mild to moderate thing. Might be like a flu, knock me out for a couple of days, but my immune system will just deal with it as it would do with any virus. And so the frustrating thing for me has been that a lot of those things that I would do to keep myself protected are not being mentioned at all by the government or the mainstream media. It's almost like the human immune system has been forgotten about. It's almost like it doesn't exist. The only protection you have is a vaccine. You can't get out and about and get on with your life until you have a vaccine or unless you have a vaccine. And this narrative that will keep you safe, what's his name? Matt Hancock. So it's probably if you have a hierarchy of values on the people that you want to punch most on the planet, he's probably top of mind. But this idea that we need to look after you, take away all of your self-responsibility, not teach you anything about this amazing immune system that's evolved over 4 billion years since life came about on Earth, and that protects you against everything else. It's basically useless against COVID, and you can't do anything. You can't get back to life until you've had an injection. I think that's bonkers, but I have to stop and think about this. The idea that the very fact that I have this, this attitude is because I've done 20, 25 years of education and I understand it. Most people haven't. So what seems to be polarizing on social media is there's a lot of people out there who are being accused of being anti-vaxxers and selfish because they don't want to have a vaccine. Well, they're the people who understand how the body works and know that they don't need one. Right? And that's
is that not weird, people who think the vaccine is going to cause problems down the line and it's microchips and it's Bill Gates been weird?
Yeah, important distinction to make. good job you raised it. Those people are going off too far. I don't agree with those people at all. So I just want to make that very clear that I'm not one of those people. Now, I do think there are very specific financial incentives behind getting vaccines onto the market. One of the things is that once you dig into it, you realize that the pharmaceutical companies run the NHS and they run the global medical system. The global medical system says, do whatever you want in life. You know, you're an innocent victim to germs, and your lifestyle really doesn't count and matter for that much. When you get ill, we will give you a magic potion or a magic pill to fix you. Pill, potion, lotion for every commotion, right? What they'll then do is then send you away with your pills. If that doesn't work, they'll give you some more. If that doesn't work over time and your body starts to pack up, they'll cut something out, you know, cut a kidney out, cut an ovary out. Not if you're a man, hopefully, you know, just do something to remove the thing that's causing the problem. Whereas a more intelligent way of doing it would be, let's get everybody educated from a young age on how to be healthy. Now, we're still all going to go off the rails and have mad teens and 20s and drink loads of booze and put things into our bodies that we shouldn't do. And, you know, all the things that we've all done. And that's great. But at least we then know when we start to break down, when we get into our 30s, that we can start to make different decisions. And we've learned as we've grown up what we're supposed to do. And so we can do that off our own back without any.
And I feel like that's kind of a long-term thing. And
it is
looking after people a lot better.
Absolutely.
And
it needs a strategy. It needs people in government who are brave enough to do that, to revamp the education system and things. So it's kind of utopian. It's a bit of a fantasy. Frankly, it's probably not going to happen, right? But that would be an ideal scenario. If that happened, I might be out of a job. So I help people who've got screwed up, who are not getting help from the medical system, or it's failing them. And so I'm grateful that the system's set up that way, because it's allowed me to develop my own projects and my own business. So it's not all bad. But when it comes to something like COVID, what we're left with is a situation in which the majority of the population genuinely believes that the only way out of this is a vaccination. And that's just disempowering people in their own health. So if you don't care about your own health, if you don't prioritize your own health and understand how your body works and how to optimize it through sensible eating, sensible movement and exercise, getting outside, getting sunlight, staying hydrated, and then if you do have any metabolic problems, find someone who can help you fix them without needing drugs and stuff. If you do not pay attention to that, you will then rely on somebody from the outside to dictate to you what you need to do. So it's very simple. If any area of your life that you don't empower yourself in, somebody from the outside is going to come in and overpower you. And that's what's happened with lockdown. Most people, certainly not everybody, but a lot of people actually think that this lockdown is a good idea. A lot of people think that the vaccine is a great idea. I think that they're both useful tools in the right context. But I think after the first lockdown, there were things that we could have done to alleviate the need for a second lockdown, because we learned so much in the first 6 months about COVID. And yes, it is nasty. It's really nasty for people who are in their 70s and above, maybe the 60s and above. And that's the point.
That's the point I'm going to make, because it's easy for me and you to get some vitamin D under the thing, do some exercise, get some sun, rest easy. But what about someone who's stressed out, or someone who's running a business, or like you say, the people in the 70s, 80s, who, if they all start getting sick and that goes around that population, and then they're all in the NHS, they're in the hospitals.
Yeah.
And then we get to...
That's right. But there's still stuff you could do. So we go back to that utopian world where everybody's been educated. They know what to do to look after themselves and keep their immune systems healthy. Okay, cool. It would be nice if the medical system was set up to do that as well, rather than just react to symptoms and disorders that people end up developing, right? It'd be nice if we have proactive health improvement rather than just disease management. right? So that's not going to happen. And like I say, that's okay because it keeps me in business. So that's great. But the frustration is that even with those older people who are more vulnerable, when you understand how the body works, you understand exactly why they're more vulnerable. It's not rocket science. It's simply to do with how their immune system changes as they get older. And then if they have certain things like dementia and type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, which seem to be a problem, there are still things you can do to really strengthen their body and their immune system so they're at less risk of having serious COVID. Now, realistically, you're never going to get everybody doing those proactive things. There are various reasons why. I had a chat with a client earlier today and said, knowing that zinc is really great for the immune system, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, there's a substance called glutathione as well, which is crucial. It's probably one of the most important substances in the body for the immune system. All of those nutrients, you could easily, look, if you can create a vaccine from scratch, spend billions and billions and billions on it, surely you can get the pharmaceutical companies to get a little bit of zinc, a little bit of A, a little bit of D, a little bit of glutathione or precursors to glutathione, blah, 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 blah. Stick it all in a tub, give it to everybody who's at risk and say, take 1 teaspoon of that in water every morning. That's not rocket science. It's not difficult to do. And you could do that. And if you did that, you would bring down by a massive amount the amount of serious COVID there is. So we know from studies that are coming out now that people who go into hospital with COVID, if they have high or adequate vitamin D levels, they have a much better outcome than people who have low vitamin D levels. Same with zinc. You could go through all of those substances, those vitamins and minerals that I've just mentioned, and you'd pretty much see the same thing. So if you gave everybody just moderate doses of those things over a period of 2 or 3 months, and you'd started that last summer after the first phase had died down and we all got released from our homes, you wouldn't prevent the spreading of it again in winter, but you'd really dampen down the number of serious cases. You'd dampen down the strain on the NHS. You'd dampen it down and manage it to such a significant degree that then you'd sit down and question whether you needed a vaccine, because you'd see that once your immune system's given what it needs, it'll actually do the job for you. Now, of course, there are still going to be some very weak and vulnerable people who needed extra care. And we don't say, I think one of the problems that people are getting confused is just because you don't agree with having a vaccine yourself, you don't want one yourself, doesn't mean you're anti-vax, doesn't mean you don't agree with people in their 80s or whatever having a vaccine. My dad has had his first vaccine. Great. Felt crap for a couple of days after it, but fantastic. He goes for his second dose. So people who are vulnerable, give them the vaccine, just like the flu vaccine and everything else. That's amazing. Do all of that for them. But don't give people a hard time if they understand how the body works and they don't want to put an experiment, which is an experimental vaccine. Nobody knows what the long-term potential consequences are. Don't round on them and call them selfish just because they don't want to put something in the body that hasn't been proven to be safe over a long period of time, right? It's all very well giving people a vaccine in the 70s, 80s, 90s when they've got that long to live. It's a completely different thing giving people vaccines if they're if they're kids or they're teens and you don't know what the long-term consequences are, especially when you know that those people don't really need it because COVID doesn't really cause serious problems in those people. So that's where the kind of the line needs to be drawn between genuine anti-vaxxers who think the vaccine's loaded with microchips and nanoparticles that Bill Gates is going to spy on you and your missus from somewhere in his lair up on a mountain, to being really sensible about it and acknowledging that our immune system really is what will save us. The vaccine should go on top of that. It shouldn't be replacing the immune system. And so give the vulnerable what they need, no problem, but don't force it on people who really don't want it or feel they don't need it. That's my stance on it.
So are you going to take it? I appreciate in lockdown in this small zone, you feel like you don't need it. What happens if you got invited to a seminar in New Zealand and for you to go and speak in New Zealand or anywhere in the world, you needed your vaccine passport?
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I'm undecided at the moment as to what I'd do in that situation. I might have the vaccine later on. I'd say I'm not going to come over and do the talk, but I'll happily do it on Zoom by distance. But that's an important point that you raise. I think people should be aware of what's going to happen. So you heard it here first. The first thing that they're going to do is they're not going to force you to have the vaccine, but then you're not going to be allowed to do some of the things you really enjoy doing if you don't have it. So by default, you have to do it. You have to have it if you want to carry on doing the things you love doing in your life. So that's the first thing. And they'll also, through the BBC and the media, they'll play emotional blackmail as well. If you don't have it, you're putting other people at risk. Well, if the vaccine works, how can you be putting other people at risk if they've already had the vaccine? Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's a strange one to me. If my grandma at 80 has had the vaccine, well, my dad actually, I'd be lucky to have a grandma at 80 at this age, but my dad at 80 has had the vaccine. He now feels safe. He's going to go out. He doesn't give a toss whether I've had the vaccine or not because he's reasonably sensible. And he'll come and spend time with me and Dominica and with no issue whatsoever. So the vaccine, and it works. It seems to be working. You know, the stats and things, great, fabulous. It's working. It seems to be doing a really good job. And that's all good. But what they're going to do is they're going to gradually narrow your options to the point where if they copy China's model, you won't be allowed into shops unless you've had a vaccine. So it's going to go from not just from going abroad. It's going to be what you can do in your own country, in your own county, in your own city, in your own little community. And eventually that's what the squeeze is going to be over the next 5 to 10 years. There's no doubt about it that that's what's going to happen. So in China at the moment, if I've got this correct, I might be wrong. This is how I understand it to be. You've got like some kind of identity card or chip or all your data in one place. It might even be on your phone with Hawaii or that company that were done for data manipulation and spying and stuff. You get classified as a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3 or something. Like that's the level of citizen you are. And right. Some of the privileges are taken away unless you're up at the top. So you won't be able to go in to the shop. And some of that ranking is going to be done on your browsing history. That's the level of surveillance and data gathering that some of the people that I follow are talking about possibly being implemented. Not tomorrow or not, it'll be done slowly, but, and there'll be benefits to that. It's going to keep criminals at bay. There's some good stuff that will come out of it. But the model is going to be super surveillance via your phone and anything else. I'm not really against all of that because I don't have anything to hide. It's not really going to change my life, but it's whether you're comfortable with a few people dictating your life. Yeah. That's the problem because that gets very, very Orwellian. It goes to 1984. It goes to Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Some of these other dystopian/utopian novels that were written. And it's fine. China seems to function fine. The people grow up with that and they don't.
Whoa. We've got to be careful. Well, say China's functioning fine. There's no Muslims. All the Muslims are in camps.
Well, no,
you can't have the internet. You can't have Twitter.
But if you grow up with that, it doesn't matter because you don't know any different. So your social conditioning determines what you'll accept and what you won't accept. So if you've had a bunch of freedom like we've had in the West over the last, since the 60s, swinging 60s kicked it all off. Rebellion against Vietnam, flower power and all of that, and everything sort of grew and spiraled out from there. We've enjoyed unprecedented freedom as a society, and it's really uncomfortable to think that we might end up like China. But if you grow up in that and you don't know any different and you're happy, then you don't know any different. If you come over to the West and go, wow, I prefer it here, then you might look back at China and go, I'm not fucking going back there, right? But it's all to do with how you've been programmed and conditioned socially in your formative years. So it feels very uncomfortable to me to think that I can't travel because I love traveling. I'm fit and healthy. I look after myself. I don't feel that I'm a danger or a burden to anybody else. To then be forced to have something put in my body that I don't need or want, that I don't think is even necessary if everybody else that is vulnerable has already been vaccinated. If that vaccine works and they want to have it, amazing, let them have it. I'm not going to stop them having a vaccine, but I don't really want to do that. Ultimately, I might have to. I mean, it might just be, look, if I want to get on with my life, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and get this thing done.
Yeah. I mean,
will I suffer because of it? I don't know. Probably not. It'll probably be absolutely fine. We're worrying about nothing. Mark Twain said most of the problems in my life I've never had, so.
Yeah. I mean, I see the media, like, if you wanted a certain town to lock down even harder and be certainly suspicious, how would you do it? Would you invent a new strain, a new super strain, and say that one person here's got it? So be.
Yeah. You don't even need to invent a new strain. You just need to spin it out on the news. That's the power of the media and social media now. There doesn't even need to be a strain. So the media is so big. The whole thing in 1984 was this thing called newspeak, where the media is just constantly being bombarded with messages from the government, the news, and it just programs you, makes you fearful. You don't even need, the problem might not even be there. It can just be spun out in the media if they want to. Now, whether they do that or not, but don't ask me, that's getting towards conspiracy theory stuff. But if you take away the idea that it is happening and just say, is it possible and feasible? If people in power have so much power that they can just manipulate it by going, let's just put out a news story that there's a really nasty strain in the southeast and we need to lock everybody down again.
We've lost one person with the Brazilian strain.
Exactly. We've got to spend 4 days trying to find this one person with all these resources and all the cost of it. For what reason? It's bizarre. It's a very, very strange situation. But I go back to my original point, which is if we had a system that was set up to promote health rather than just managing and fighting disease, we wouldn't have this problem. So the problem is the way the system is set up. We can't change it because it's a juggernaut. It's an government industrial complex that's just profit driven, and we can't change it. But what we can do is empower ourselves with knowledge and understanding to reduce our risk and just see things slightly differently than most people do.
Yeah. I mean, in the short term, the government might say, listen, we're the ones who have to pay for all the diabetes treatment. We're the ones who have to pay for policemen to stop you fighting on a Saturday night when you're in town. Like, we tell you not to do these things. And so a lot of these things should be your own values. Don't eat shit all day and night. Don't get diabetes. But the government have to bail you out.
Yeah.
Don't fight on a Saturday night. I mean, I've never been a fighter, but I know, having walked down, they have to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds in every city in the land on a Saturday night, not in the short term, but previously, because people get in fights and knock shit out of each other on a Saturday night. So that's what the government say. I feel like the government see a different side to us than we actually have.
Well, I think if you take a step back, I try and take all of that from reading lots of sociology and psychology, and it's not my strongest topic by any means, but I try to learn a bit about it so I can potentially put myself in the government's shoes. And you're absolutely right. It's like you can't have rules and regulations for different groups of people based on their behavior, right? You seem like a good guy, you can go to the pub. You've been in trouble a couple of times over the last 18 months with the old bill. You're not allowed to go out. Maybe that's something that they are looking to do by having all this tagging system and this China-like surveillance, because it would allow you to potentially do that. If you're at number one and there's a lockdown, you say that, the number one people can still go to the pub and still go to restaurants or go ice skating or whatever. But if you're at number three, you're not allowed to go out because you've not behaved yourself, and you're not contributing to society at the same level as a number one. I think that's a very slippery slope, to go down that way. But it's possible that you could end up controlling people. But
where would you put your special health drink?
If you're the government,
if you're the one telling the people that they need to take a special drink and not have an injection, what's more complicated? A drink.
It's easy to do. One spoonful of this every day or every couple of days, or if there's big doses, once a week, get that down you.
So, but you can see from a skeptic, I appreciate the value of supplementation, certainly in this example, but can you see the example of you want people to take a drink and they want you to have one injection and then you're done?
Absolutely. But we're not just talking about the injection. People have been stuck at home for a year. Millions of people have got less money now. They're unemployed, they're depressed, they're anxious. There's a whole bunch of stuff that the shit hasn't even hit the fan with all of that yet. So there's a couple of books on my bookshelf there called, one's called The Health Gap and one's called Status Syndrome. And they're written by a guy called Michael Marmot, who's been knighted by the Queen for his work. He is a medical doctor, but he's also an epidemiologist. And his big interest has been, what is the role of social influences on health and disease? And so the upshot of the whole thing was, he said something like, if you go from this district or this tube stop in Washington, D.C., and then you go out and out through this district, this district, this district, and this district, along that ride, the average life expectancy increases by 15 years, or 0.5 years per tube stop, for example.
15 years on the whole line.
Yeah, so the whole line is 15 years of change in life expectancy. Same city.
Yeah.
So he showed that that's the case in pretty much every city in the world. Then they showed that it was the case between different countries based on their socioeconomic status. And then they showed it even happens in corporations. So the whole work, the project that kicked it off was something called the British Civil Servants or Civil Service Study. They basically showed that the lower workers versus the CEOs or the people at the top, and this is in the government civil service, top brass versus sort of menial workers, cleaners and things like that. No disrespect to anybody who's doing that. But they showed that for every increment in earning and feeling of control in your job, you decrease the amount of heart disease and other diseases that you get. So there's a social stratification to disease and health. What it showed was the main components of that, whether it's in a city, whether it's in a country, whether it's in a business, whatever the hierarchy that you're in, there were 3 or 4 key things that were hugely important. Number one is your health depends on the amount of control that you perceive to have in your life. Right? How much control do you have when the government just tells you to fucking lock down, you're not allowed to do anything? Right? That takes away a lot of people's control. Maybe not me and you, because we've got a bit of an entrepreneurial streak in us. We can adapt and, we see benefits and drawbacks to that. Some people benefit from the lockdown, so it's not everybody. But if you have your job just whipped away and you've got no other means of income, and all of a sudden now you've got, you're on benefit and you can't pay your bloody bills and the 2 kids or whatever your situation is, that's going to affect your health. So that's what they showed. They've done these 50 years of studying. It is since the mid-60s they've done on all of this around the world. It holds true everywhere. So you've got lack of control, and then it's what amount or how do you perceive that you're able to integrate into society and make a contribution? An active participant in society. Well, that gets fucked over by lockdown for a lot of people as well. So you've got the 2 biggest ones, social participation and feeling or perception of control over your life, hammered by 12 months of lockdown, because people aren't allowed to do what they want to do. So by definition, they're not in control. That's going to affect an awful lot of people. And that's going to place untold amounts of stress on the NHS over the next 5 years, as people try and get their lives back as a result of that. The next one is social isolation. Well, bugger me. Social isolation is another massive factor in health. So you've got 3 massive ones that the lockdown has created because of a government decision. So the vaccine's just one part of this, right? This is all about the social influence of health. Now, this is going to blow people's minds. How many people have heard on the news or from the doctor that high cholesterol is a risk factor for various health problems, notably heart disease, but also things like dementia and what have you? High cholesterol.
Everyone.
Right. Everybody. It's probably the number one thing. What about smoking? What about drinking? What about eating a crap diet? Pretty much everybody has an awareness that they are significant in determining your health outcome through life, whether that's cancer risk, heart disease risk, whatever it might be. in all of the number crunching that they did in these projects, they showed that these social factors accounted, well, you have a guess. What percentage was attributed to the social factors compared to the smoking, drinking, and all of that stuff?
In terms of
overall contribution to the differences in people's health.
In what sense?
Well, if you've got high cholesterol and you smoke and you drink,
yeah,
right, that's a risk. That they're pretty significant risk factors for getting health problems, right, further down the line.
Yeah.
Right. So group all of those things together and say we've got 100%. How of all of those physical things that we've just talked about, what percentage could those risks explain in terms of health risk overall?
8%? High.
33%. 60, well, it's basically 1/3 versus 2/3. You could only account for 1/3 of people's health problems, shall we say, or increased health risk from those physical factors. All the rest of it was psychosocial. 2/3 of people's health problems come from psychosocial factors. And that's number crunched. It's like everywhere in every country, in every city, and even in corporations and businesses, wherever there's a hierarchy of people with resources down to people without resources relative, for every step up the ladder you go, there's a relative increase in health. And it's mostly explained by psychosocial factors, not diet, not smoking, not drinking. They're definitely important because 1/3 is a lot, right? But 2/3 of it is psychosocial. So we go back to the government response to COVID, where we've been locked down for a year, and we take those factors into account and we go, shit, all of a sudden we realize that the lockdown is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be. It's to try and combat one virus that we have an immune system that we could build to combat, while at the same time increasing people's risk of mental health and physical health problems due to the psychosocial consequences. And it's proven. So some of the people I follow reckon there are going to be 10 times the number of deaths indirectly from the lockdown than there have been from COVID.
Right.
But it's going to be very hard to track that. It's almost impossible, because the stress that you've had for the last 6 to 12 months might lead to problems in another year's time. It's going to be very difficult to tie that back to the lockdown. So the government can get away with all of this because they're never going to be held accountable. But the increase in anxiety, in depression, there's already been a bit of an increase in suicides, child abuse at home. Because people stay at home drinking, they're frustrated, they don't have control over life, they don't feel like they're contributing. So the slightest little thing, Liverpool losing 6 games on the trot, it's enough to get you to want to punch a few things, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
So that's the untold story. And my issue, as I've said to you, is I don't think lockdown was a bad idea the first time round, but we know so much about COVID now. We actually know how to combat it. We know we've got an immune system that can be tuned and programmed to be very effective against it. We need to get the vulnerable people vaccinated so that they're at lowest risk. People under 50 and under 60, working age, should just be allowed to get out and get back on with things. I mean, and what's frustrating is you've already got, some doctor came out yesterday on the BBC and said, now we need to brace ourselves for a flu epidemic next winter, because our immunity against flu is going to be down now because we've been in COVID. So now, fucking doomsday story about flu. Chris Whitty came out today again and said, the pandemic's not over yet. Almost seeding the idea that there are going to be more lockdowns. Now, people are going to go mad if there are any more lockdowns. I think we'll start to get some anarchy. It could be fun. Yeah. Get out of this one, and then a couple of months later, COVID starts creeping up again. If they lock us down again, I think a lot of people are just going to say, fuck this. There's no way we're...
I feel like, because I live on a street here, it's busier as it ever been. And traffic, when you're out on the roads, I feel like people are out and about now.
I think a lot of people are starting to cotton on to what's going on, but they don't have the courage on their own to just go out and say, fuck you, Boris.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people are going out and speaking to clients and having lots of meetings and stuff. I feel like people are, not naming names, are
getting out there and
meeting up in gardens and meeting up for drinks and going, and feel like it's just the business owners that don't want to open because they know they'll get a fine on the back of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We're already planning. We haven't done it yet. We're going to plan for it, but when it's warmer, and probably everything will be open by then anyway. So I'm quite content to stay at home. In my life, you see, this is the thing. People might say, oh, well, put yourself in other people's shoes and what have you. But I can continue running my business from home. And it hasn't the lockdown hasn't affected me business-wise. I'm genuinely concerned about people who are vulnerable to COVID, dying from COVID. I don't want that to happen. That's why I think getting everybody vaccinated in the high-risk groups is great. But to wait until everybody else is vaccinated before we get out is ridiculous. Because you and I, if we get COVID, we might be ill for a week. We might not get any symptoms, as most of the cases are asymptomatic. So if there's no risk and the hospitals are empty again, we should just be getting everybody out there. Everybody who needs to be vaccinated, who's vulnerable, has been vaccinated now, pretty much. So we just need to get out there and carry on with things. It's cruel to keep people at home when there isn't a need to do so. So I really feel sorry for people who have struggled with businesses. There are people, but put it this way, you were working, some people get furlough. I also think that's dangerous because people now sit at home and go, well, why would I want to go back to work? I've been sitting at home getting 8% of my wage paid, and the other 20% would have been eaten up by eating out at work and travel costs. So I'm actually better off sitting at home now and not doing anything because I still get the money. That's going to be hard for people to come back. One of our neighbours has a company and they're struggling with that already. The workers don't want to come back to work. And now they're going, it's too dangerous to come back to work. When it's not, but that's the excuse that comes out. You can't force us. It's too dangerous. I, as a company director, even though I was in I've been in a transitional phase of my business for a couple of years now since we were working together.
A couple of years?
Yeah, the main transition. It's a very, very big transition. It's
I'll give you it.
Not easy. There's a lot of intellectual property to create. But it came at the worst time for me. So I've taken a bounce back loan out, but it's put me in a little bit of debt. I didn't want to go into debt. So it's weird how, despite the business owners being the people who have been crunched the most, you don't get any government support. If you're a company director, there's no support. It's bonkers, right? So the people that I give work to get money, but I don't get any. So I'm not moaning about it because I find my way through it. It's okay, but it's ridiculous that this lockdown has affected the economy so much, and the very people who create the jobs and who create the businesses that serve are the ones, if they're registered as a limited company, don't get anything from the government at all. It's assumed, I presume this is it, that if you're a company director, you're creaming off dividends from your profits every year. And that's not the case for most business owners. That's just not the case, especially while you're in the growth phase. So I really feel sorry. Because I'm an entrepreneur and I've got my own business, I feel sorry for business owners who have been completely fucked by this without any real help from the government. Help to the workers that they employ, but not to them. There's loads of stories out there. I've had to borrow 5 million just to stay closed for 6 months. If I own a chain of restaurants and stuff like that, how's that ever going to get repaid?
Yeah.
So who benefits from the lockdown? Supermarkets have benefited. Amazon's benefited. Anybody who does mail order.
My Amazon shares haven't gone up for weeks.
The banks, you should have bought them in January last year.
Well, yeah.
The banks, anybody who's lending. There's all sorts going on. But anyway, we have to get on with our own lives and work to our own values and things and be observant about what's going on outside, but we can't control it. But I think it's important for people to just be a bit more mindful of some of the things that are going on and just stop and think, about how the world's changing and how they might position themselves, because it is going to change over the next 5 or 10 years significantly.
I feel like, one, we've made a big dent on this COVID thing. And I feel like we've ironed out some facts and got some good information on there. I also feel like we've run out of time because we had some notes to talk about metabolism and metabolic typing.
Well, let's do metabolic typing because we can do that pretty quickly.
Can we?
We can do it in 3 minutes.
Go.
So the idea of metabolic typing is simply individual requirements for different diets according to one's own genetics and needs. So first set of information that this was based on is a guy called Weston A. Price, who was a dentist, actually. He traveled around the world in the 1920s, something like that. And he went around and studied indigenous cultures. And he basically found that they were all really healthy. They're all human beings, found that they were all really healthy. But depending on where they were in the world, they were eating completely different diets, which gets you thinking, well, it can't just be a one-size-fits-all dietary approach that works for everybody, right? They were all really healthy. What they found, though, when white man's food was introduced, processed foods, oils, sugars, flour, all of that sort of thing, then within a generation, those people started to develop problems with their health. So that's the first bit. The second bit is there was a guy in the mid-50s and 60s called Roger J. Williams, wrote a book on biochemical individuality and said, look, when we look at people's chemistry and things, it's obvious that we all need a slightly different ratio of different nutrients and things. Macros, fats, proteins, carbohydrates. We have different fuel needs, and we need different ratios of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, again, depending on our genetics, because some of our our metabolic pathways will burn through nutrients faster than other people's do, right? Just depending on their own genes. Then lifestyle gets thrown in with that as well. Metabolic typing came along and said, let's take this further and let's try and figure out how we can figure out what somebody's individual's needs might be. And it was developed first by a guy called William Kelly. He created a cancer program for different metabolic needs. And then a guy called William Wolcott, who's still going strong, legendary guy, he wrote a book called The Metabolic Typing Diet. And he set up a whole system via a very comprehensive questionnaire online to analyze certain characteristics, you know, your emotional and physical characteristics, or should I say your emotional and mental, psychological characteristics, physical characteristics, body shape and type, all of those kinds of things. Number crunches the whole thing, spits out a report telling you what your metabolic type is. And the very simple way of looking at it is your body too acidic or too alkaline? Why? What foods do you need to rebalance that? You know, there's a myth that everybody's too acidic. It's not good to be too alkaline either. And the other element of it is, what's your individual fuel mix? Are you the type of person who looks like they're going to need more protein and fat, a la paleo, a la ketogenic? Or do you look like you need a much lighter diet that's richer in plant-based foods, root vegetables, grains, and things like that? Yeah. So more along the vegetarian, vegan, plant-based end of the spectrum. Or are you somewhere in between? And so we found that, 15 years ago, when we started using that, we found that really valuable for people. It sorted a lot of people out. They weren't eating what you would think is a bad diet. You'd look at it and go, well, they're eating decent quality foods. They're not overeating. They're not undereating. There's plenty of veggies and fruits and things in there, yet they still feel terrible. And then you do the metabolic typing and go, well, it's actually because they're at the wrong end of the spectrum of where they need to be. They need to have more protein and more fat in there. And then, within 2 or 3 weeks, they'd go, whoa, energy's up, sleeping better, and all of that stuff. And with other people, it was the other way around. They were eating too much red meat or whatever, and they needed to eat more grains and plants and things like that. And so it's a neat little system that blows out of the window the idea that there's a one-size-fits-all dietary approach that's going to work for everybody. And it needs a little bit of experimentation. The other thing, the conclusion that I came to was, because a lot of people seem to do really well on keto, and a lot of people do well on paleo or versions of those, even the carnivore diet, which is like no plant-based material at all. Jordan Peterson, daughter, and these kinds of people. And then at the other end of the spectrum, loads of people seem to have really great transformations from a vegan diet, plant-based, whatever. I just came to the conclusion that it's obvious that we are designed to eat pretty much anything. we are omnivorous. If we can thrive on a ketogenic diet and we can thrive on a vegan diet, which are almost two opposite ends of the spectrum, surely that just tells us that we are able to eat pretty much anything. So all of these fashionable diets that are out there telling you this is the way to do it, you have to be really careful with those, because we're unique, and whatever that so-called expert says over there may not be what we need as individuals.
I remember being at a lecture from Precision Nutrition, and they kind of said, so we had all these people who were doing high, let's say breakfast. They're having high fat and protein breakfast, fry-ups. And we took them and we put them on, or this study that he'd found, and they took them and they put them on carbohydrate diets, and the people on carbohydrate diets, they put them onto high protein, high fat diets, and they all got a positive upsweep in weight loss and like energy balance and stuff like that. So do you feel like people get a benefit from change?
They can do. It depends on their individual situation, definitely. There's all sorts of things that go into that. You know, if you've been eating one way in a pretty boring, stagnant fashion, same thing day in, day out, you know, with very little variation in there, your microbiome is going to shift. Your bacterial balance is going to be totally different from what it was before you started that approach. Your metabolism is going to shift and maybe get stuck. Might not be the right approach for you as an individual. And you might find that just going to the opposite brings you a significant reward. Your microbiome will change. That changes your metabolism significantly. You know, your insulin levels and neurotransmitters and hormones and things, not to mention the calories. Maybe you're getting some micronutrients, vitamins and minerals that you've been missing from the other eating approach. But one of the things that, I think is really important is what we found often is the diet or the approach that helps the person make a really big shift initially isn't necessarily the diet that's going to work for them in 12 months' time or 5 years' time. But people's psychology is really funny around this, because if you go, right, I've been feeling terrible or I've been really overweight, I shift to this new eating approach. Could be keto, could be vegan at the other end of the spectrum. Whoosh, I've lost a load of weight. My energy's gone up, you know, starting to see muscles that I've not been able to see, you know, because of the layers of fat and things like that. You know, my hormones are balancing out and my skin's clearing up, whatever it might be. You go, Jesus, this diet is absolutely amazing. Over the period of the next few months or the year or a couple of years, when you start to feel unwell again, it's difficult to then go back and blame the diet because it worked really well for you the first time.
Yeah.
So your psychology is fixed on that this is the diet or this is the approach for me, when actually what it did is it just gave you a jolt, shifted your metabolism up, your body needed a change. It was the right change for you at the time. Now it's the wrong thing to do. It's psychologically demanding for people to accept that and acknowledge it and then realize that they need to change again. That's the kind of thing that we're up against a lot when we do our work. We've worked with a lot of people who go to a Tony Robbins seminar, and he used to be a really big plant-based proponent, you know, green drinks, green smoothies, all of these things, you know, no issue with those, but there are dangers associated with them. In fact, that'd be a great topic to cover for people, because it's really important. And then they come to us after 5 or 10 years of that and they go, I feel absolutely shit. I've got no energy. I'm peeling my face off the pillow in the morning. I can barely get up. I don't have energy to go through the day. I need 6 cups of coffee, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at them and you go, you're not eating enough protein. In fact, you're hardly eating any. Why? Oh, well, because Tony Robbins, well, he's not a fucking nutritionist.
Yeah.
No, he's just some dude. And so a great guy, really, really great guy.
Oh, I love Tony. Yeah, everyone loves Tony.
He shouldn't be recommending the same diet to everybody, because that's not correct practice.
That's not how it works.
And so it takes them a while to get unstuck. Well, but if Tony Robbins, who's a billionaire, told me how to do it, and he's great on stage when I've been to see him, and he gets my dopamine levels up and I feel amazing, I can't go against what he says, surely. And it's really hard to get people's head around the fact that that's the worst thing that they could be doing at the moment. So your psychology around this is really important, but simplifying it, the message is, don't subordinate to a guru who tells you what to do. Play around and do some biohacking yourself. Yeah. And if you need some advice, find someone who really knows a lot about this so they can actually accelerate that process of biohacking for you. Tell you which tests you need to do, little tricks of the trade, tweaks things, and you'll get there a lot faster.
And that's the way. Right.
Well, it's the same with training, isn't it? I'm not going to waffle on, but it's the same with training.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you've never exercised, a gym is daunting. 5 or 10 sessions with you, and all of a sudden your confidence is up. You know what exercises to do. You know how to use the equipment that you need to use. You know what the correct posture is and the correct form is for the exercises that you're doing, whether you're using bands or dumbbells or whatever it might be, cable machines. And you've saved yourself so much time and energy just by paying somebody to show you how to do it and do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. I feel like we could talk all day. I'm going to cap it right now.
I agree. I've got stuff to do now.
Amazing. Yeah, we've got things to do. Life carries on behind the world of glamorous podcasting production.
Yeah. I've been trying to learn Many of Horror by Biffy Clyro on the guitar today.
How's that working out?
It's theoretically quite easy, but you've just got to get your fingers. It's just the nervous system needs to start remembering. But it's really good. Have you tried to learn that one at all?
I've not had a go on that one.
Oh, it's good.
The last one I've had a look at recently was I've managed to get Just Looking by the Stereophonics down.
Okay.
Which is all right. And then I got really excited.
Can you sing it?
There's no singing going on today. And then the other one I was looking at is Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way?
Uh-huh.
But I feel like I need reverb, and this amp doesn't. I need the foot switch to work, and the foot switch doesn't work to get the reverb going.
Can you turn it up where you live, or is the apartment a little bit a tricky place to stick the amp on?
It's not too bad. Like, I feel the thick walls, the thick chunky walls, as you can see, this one here is like thick, and the bloke who lives this side is a sailor, so he's never in. So it's kind of like his is a studio like mine, so it's like he's never there. He's always on the boat. And this side, I don't really hear anything from these. So.
Yeah, but that's not the point. Can they hear you?
So, yeah. All right. So I have it on kind of low. I don't need.
Yeah. It never sounds as good, though, does it? When you're trying to learn something and you have to keep it low, it never can't get the drive and the gain on it and get it really ramped up.
I'll have to buy a farm.
That's why I just finger pick with an acoustic, so I don't upset anybody then.
Yeah.
Nice one. Very good. Well, I really appreciate being on. It's always
pleasure. Do you want to just remind everyone where we can find you on social network and the internet?
Yeah, I'm at, I can't remember. I'm at Higher Minded Health is the new Instagram handle. That's going to be the new project, talking about everything that I've learned over the last 20 years or so. Dave Hompes, Hompes, and you'll find me because it's a very rare name. You're not going to find anybody else from Yorkshire or in England with that name. So Facebook, Instagram. I've not been on Twitter for years, but I suppose I better get on there. Facebook and Instagram, ideally.
No one tweets anymore.
Yeah. And the website's davehompes.com at the moment.
At the moment?
Yeah, it'll be highermindedhealth.com eventually. So just working through all those steps, though, as I said a few minutes ago.
Little by little. Right. Indeed. Amazing. Thank you for your time again. I appreciate it. And I've had feedback from the first one we did that everyone really enjoyed yours. So
cool.
I'm going to have you back on.
Appreciate it. I really do.
Right. David, thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I'll catch you later.